which is about Agenda 21. So we have two awesome, fairly local people here to speak to us tonight. Most of you here are familiar with the topic, and you might know some of the general things, but I know Judy Jones, who's going to be speaking after Kathy. Judy's had firsthand experience with some of these issues. Kathy Russell is currently a resident of Converse County and has lived in Wyoming for 20 plus years. Kathy has been involved in civic and political life in Evanston, Gillette, and Douglas, where she served on the city council. As a city councilwoman, Kathy attended Wyoming Association of Municipalities and National League of Cities meetings as a city representative. She has studied and followed sustainability initiatives and program implementations in Wyoming, and those initiated and directed by global organizations in our nation and around the world. Please welcome Kathy Russell.
Thank you very much. First, I want to apologize to all of you for my tardiness and the glitches. When I was doing my studying on this, as you all know, this topic is overwhelming. And so as I get this started.
Grab that little paddle's little cheese for you.
Pardon?
There you go.
This topic is absolutely overwhelming. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, going to the National League of Cities and going to WAM, I've seen how all of this works. I've attended meetings with federal and state task forces. I've gone to city council meetings, county meetings, and I can tell you there are patterns that happen over and over and over to get all this stuff implemented. I'm here to give you the bad news. How many of you have seen a series of unfortunate events? Okay, remember the beginning of the movie, and there's a cartoon, and he's saying, I'd love to be here to tell you the story of the happy fairies dancing in the world and living forever, but I'm not here to tell you that. So that's me. I'm not here to tell you that. Agenda 21, is everyone on board now? The liner is full, and it's full, and are you on it? Kathy, do you want that little cordless microphone?
Yeah, give it to her. I think it's helped the
Sorry,
guys
it's
closer
right
to the
here.
back.
Just hook that to your...
I'm a big mouth. You can hear me anywhere.
am technologically challenged.
Stick it in her skirt or something. Try that.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
Is that any better? Okay. Anyway, I would love to be here and tell you a happy story, but I'm not going to, that's not our happy story. We got a lot of work to do. One of the first things I want to tell you, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Am I still? Okay, good. And
Arrow down.
page down. Okay, let's just review very quickly. Agenda 21 was one of 5 documents created at the 1992 Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit. Every one of these is a critical component to what we're seeing today. So the 5 documents were Agenda 21, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, the Statement of Forest Principles, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. What we call Agenda 21 is actually the outcome of all 5 of these documents. And so we're going to walk through real quickly what each of those, the short story on each of them. Okay, Agenda 21. The premises in Agenda 21 are that human living conditions are worsening. This is 1992. Compare that to 1892 or 1792. Boggles mind. Life benefits are unequally enjoyed. True. We're destroying the environment. That's a concept, not a proven fact. Richer nations, and here's the other part. So those are the premises, and here's the cure. Here's the fix. We have to fix it, and you rich folks are going to pay for it. That means Western developed nations, and particularly the United States. Smarter, more creative nations must share their innovations and expertise freely with the have-nots. This is where our intellectual resources come into play, and how we're being asked to just give those up. Okay, the key tools that came out of this was sustainable development. This is where sustainable development was introduced. The term, the concept, the principles. The other key tool is the U.S. is going to have to pay the lion's share of the costs all the way around. Okay, the declaration. This was 27 principles to guide development, the sustainable development. 27 principles. If you get a chance, look through them. But what it boils down to is humans are our primary concern in sustainable development because we're entitled to a healthy, productive life in harmony with nature. There's the happy singing bluebirds. However, we will agree to protect the environment first. You're number one, but we're going to take care of the trees first. Okay? The key tool that came out of this document was called the precautionary principle. I was a master's candidate at Colorado State University in the graduate degree program in ecology. And I went in there naive and dumb as a rock about what I was getting into. I thought I was getting into rainforest management all grown up. But as I started attending the classes and listening to what they were doing, there was no science behind anything they were doing. And as I spoke up in class, I became to be a very unpopular student. It was all based on this precautionary principle. I actually had my lab space in our program director's lab. And I had a lot of discussions with him. And he said, and I would argue and say, look, we're just at the point where we can begin to measure some of the impacts we're having. And he said, Kathy, we don't do natural history anymore. We've got to move on. It's too late. We're behind. I said, behind on what? We have goals to meet. Goals to meet.
You gave them to them.
Okay? The precautionary principle says, if we even think there can be damage come from it, we've got to go ahead and put any measures in place that we can to stop it. Now, if you don't know what you're measuring, what the causes were, what the damage is, whether or not it's part of the natural cycle, how are you justifying putting these measures in? You don't have to. That's the precautionary principle.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Who gets to decide whether there's a suspicion that there could be damage or harm?
The intellectual class.
It's all
The intellectual political class.
Academically?
The
Yes.
fascist control freaks.
Okay.
Some of them are true believers.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of them are great people, but they're true believers. And others are, they know exactly what they're doing. Okay, this is the next document, the Statement of Forest Principles. Forests are a critical resource to all states. All throughout the UN document, what you will hear used is the term states. What they mean is nations. When you hear the term statist, he's devoted statist, that's what they mean. We're all just part of a big conglomeration, and state also has a political meaning we won't get into right now. But anyway, they did recognize that forests are critical. That's how we build our houses. That's how we do so many things. But we know it's really important to you, but we now have to scrutinize every use you think you're going to put that timber to. Okay? In putting that timber to use, there were two things that came out of that. Special classes are going to get priority in that use. Remember how we've been talking about we're adding classes of people who deserve special consideration?
Some are more equal than others.
You got it. So right now we have anywhere from 14 to 17 special classes defined in each state. Okay, so opinions of these special classes will be given first consideration. And number two, timber is once again a renewable energy source. Remember how glad that everybody was When we had combustion engines and didn't have to use wood to heat our houses, timber was used as an example of a renewable resource because it's one everybody could grasp. Everybody's made a campfire. Everybody's seen or heard or used a wood stove. It was a concept they could grasp and was an intro to other things that are much more difficult to understand, like using algae for fuel.
Is that part of the go paperless thing too?
Yeah. The statement of forest principles, the key tools from this document is and here's where my facetiousness comes in and my skepticism. Every tree is sacred. That's where that whole movement came in. We got to save every single tree. And the renewable fuel concept. Those are the two key tools that came out of that document. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Humans must really cut back on any activity that creates CO2. This is the whole CO2 is the bad guy. And it created the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, to create and develop the consensus on global warming. Now they call it global change because there is no global warming. So this is what established CO2 as the greenhouse gas that we're creating that's damaging the environment. It was such a great umbrella tool. So the tools that came from that is, this is a treaty, so it's enforceable, and man-caused CO2 is heating up the world. It didn't matter that it got disproven. Now they call it all different kinds of things, but those are the two tools that came out of that. Okay, the last one. The UN Convention on Biological Diversity. What it said basically is we're going to conserve biological diversity. We don't want to lose any species. Okay, never mind the fact that every species has a life cycle as a whole. They will enforce sustainable use of biodiversity components. That's the whole thing behind sustainable forests, sustainable ecosystems, sustainable fisheries, sustainable wildlife. See Governor's Task Force on Wildlife right now. Will fairly and equitably share the benefits of genetic resources. That's seed stock, that's genetic manipulation. That came out of this. The key tools were, this is a treaty that is legally binding to anyone who signed on. The U.S. didn't sign on, but have implemented the principles.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if we signed on or not. So once again, everything that you have seen here was implemented in our country by executive decree or policy. Then it got inwoven in our law. Okay? Authorities are very important. And increasingly we see authority being derived from one man's idea, an executive order from a president, an executive order from a governor, a decision by a mayor or a city council. Okay, what are the roots? Where the heck did this come from? Well, the long story is the German schools of economics and political science in the 17 and 1800s are a huge component of it. And this was born out of intellectuals who saw their power declining because people were becoming more educated. There were also royalty who were losing their places because people were saying, no more, my family is part of that. They were Germans living in Germany. They were sick and tired of being involved in the land wars of the various little fiefdoms, and they moved to Russia. They consequently moved here, and the ones who didn't wound up in Siberian camps, dying, starvation. So this is where it came from, and here's their concepts. The merit system of rewarding, whether it's in business or appointments or anything else, is unfair. Market economics rely on stupid people. Everybody in this room helps drive market decisions with what you buy.
Yep.
Your dollar speaks. That's immoral. There are better things that you should be spending your money on. That was the concept. You're too dumb to decide what you need and how to use it. And who should make the decisions? The intellectuals, the ones who have studied, the experts. Okay? So who carried it forward? The League of Nations. This is a Woodrow Wilson thing. And what they added was, and we want to be safe while we're making these, we want all of you to be safe while we're making these decisions for you. Collective security. This is where a big part of the anti-war movement came in. And what we'll do in the League of Nations to get rid of this war and have collective security, we're going to settle everything through international negotiation and arbitration. That was in war. But what we have seen happen is that has been extended now to anything. You got a disagreement on what to do with your forest or with your national park? Let's do it through international negotiation. It started here and then expanded. The next thing that happened was the adoption of environmentalism to control consumption and the adoption of the education system to control culture. Those are the basic steps, the big giant steps that were taken to get us where we are today. So the short story is, what was really driving these folks? Greed,
Money.
jealousy, hate, envy, and the biggie, lack of brotherly love. Anybody recognize those from like Ten Commandments or? Okay, a word about conspiracies. Let's talk about the word conspire. Conspire means to meet in secret, a meeting in secret by two or more persons to plot an evil, unlawful, treacherous, or surreptitious plan. That's what it means to conspire. How many of you have seen the term conspiracy theory thrown around about Agenda 21 taking
Always.
over?
Yeah,
Always.
Always.
Always. Do you know why
To
they call
discredit.
it? No, here's the key. Intent. If I don't intend to harm you, I'm not conspiring. Yes, I'm meeting behind closed doors with other people and I'm making plans for your private land, but I don't have an evil intent,
Because you said so.
so I'm not conspiring. So you think it's you think I am, but I'm not, because I don't intend to hurt you. They're being completely honest when they call it a conspiracy theory, that we think they're trying to harm us. Well, yeah. If you're going to tell me how I can use my land, whether or not I can live in my own single-family home, I consider that harm. But this is how they can justify using the word. They don't intend to hurt you. Okay. Don't let that stop you from talking. Ever. Be firm in what you speak, and don't get into all of this. Just firmly say, I don't think you have the right to tell me how to live. If I'm not hurting you, I expect you not to hurt me. Being able to predict what a globalist will do next does not make you a conspiracy theorist, because all of their actions are predictable. It's all predictable. Resist the urge to be shamed into silence by the media, by bureaucrats, by elected officials, or by family or friends. And let go of that fear. Let go of that anger. Because they use it.
Oh, yeah.
They feed off of it. Okay. Out in left field, how the heck did we get here? Two key things. One from Abraham Lincoln: the philosophy in the schoolroom in one generation will become the philosophy of government in the next.
Ain't that a truth?
Abraham Lincoln. In one 10-year period, I saw the culture of a government agency office that I dealt with on a frequent basis. I saw that culture change entirely. From one that believed in and was practicing really good multiple use management of the land, which is mandated. This is BLM, for BLM land, into a culture where they believed that they had to shut down everything. It was their duty to shut down everything but wildlife management. And not only that, to manage all the lands in any proximity to BLM land. That was in one 10-year period, one man changed the culture of that office of 150 people.
Jesus.
Okay? He changed the culture. You don't have to change the law or the policy. You can just change the culture. Change agent. How fortunate for governments that the people they administer don't think. For crying out loud, we need to regain the capacity to think, to reason, to debate with knowledge, with calmness. Those are the two things that allowed us to get where we are. I would add that we allowed our Judeo-Christian culture to be trashed
Oh, yeah.
and changed. I don't know if allowed is the right word. I have that argument within myself. I'm not sure. Okay. What's the end goal? Where the heck are you taking me? Short story, it's none of your business. See, too dumb to decide, a few slides back. The long story, unsustainable practices are going to be done away with. Private land ownership. Land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable. How many ranchers do we have in here? Anybody? Right now, the BLM and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is making decisions on how a landowner can use his land if there's an oil well on it, if there's a pipeline on it, if there's a power line on it, if there's anything that is considered, if the feds had their hand on it anywhere, whether they gave them money, whether there's a structure on it, they're calling the shots on that land use. I've written the plans. I'm an environmental consultant. Private business. This one I love. Roy Elliker was talking about ranchers who graze on public lands. That's part of the multiple use management plan. He is now a director in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the Pacific region, Northwest Pacific region. Here's what he said. Make him, the rancher, pay for what he does out there and make it so expensive in his operation and make so many changes for him to continue to run cattle on public lands that he goes broke.
Nice.
Oh,
That's a bad intent, in my opinion.
well, think of Clive Bundy.
Either make him go broke or outlast him.
Yep.
The Hages. Wait till they die. And he actually went on to say that further in the quote. What else is unsustainable? Families, homes, inheritances, cars, market-driven use of energy, water, and food. Have you ever heard of a food shed?
No, I heard
Any
of
of you
water
ever heard of
shed.
a food shed? How about an energy shed? A food shed is what we're supposed to start adopting. A food shed is what you grow in your 100-mile radius. That's going to become your food shed. And you're supposed to go buy your food that is locally sourced within some place that's supposed to be within a 20-minute walk. Not a car ride, a walk. This is part of what's behind the rural, now I can't remember the term, the Rural Council, the President's Rural Council, to help us. Yes?
Isn't that kind of what Pol Pot tried to do in Cambodia?
Oh, that's what lots of them have tried to do all kinds of places. Yeah, it doesn't work
Move
out
out
well.
of the cities, go rural.
Oh, yes.
How many million cities lives on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
China, same thing.
1/3 of the population,
Yep.
30% or more.
So if this doesn't get stopped, this is where we're headed. It does not end well. Okay. They want public participation. We're not doing this behind your backs. We want you in there participating.
Uh-huh.
How many times do you see that? We're going to have a public meeting. You find out about it
Busy
24,
group.
48 hours beforehand. Okay. The short story, yeah, they want you to participate, and they'll tell you how. And what? The long story. This is Maurice Strong, one of the founders of the whole, he was at the Earth Summit, a big player. What he said was, our concepts of ballot box democracy, in other words, us having a voice in what happens, may need to be modified to produce strong governments capable of making difficult decisions. Obama said yesterday, and he's just one example, there's many, 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 and it's bipartisan. I'm going to push ahead harder, and I'm fearless. Because he knows now he's not going to get any pushback.
Yeah.
He's going to make the hard decisions. And we got elected officials doing that everywhere. He's not alone. Okay. Participation does not equal deliberation and decision making. Consensus building in the Delphi technique. How many of you are aware of this? Okay. The Delphi technique was developed by the Rand Corporation as a method of prediction in warfare. Actually, the concept of it isn't that bad. You want to be able to figure out where the enemy is going and anticipate what they're going to do in order to beat them. But it morphed. And what happens now, and if you've ever been to a public meeting on a plan, on a task force, on a commission, on anything, any of the interim committees working right now. I went to one for the Wyoming Business Alliance. I went to another one
I did that.
right before that.
I did that one here too.
Yeah, I went to another one right after that on wildlife. They all run the same.
Yep.
In fact, I was on the inside of one as a city councilman, and I'm shocked to see how it all worked. But it works the same every single time.
Yep.
And here's what happens. Before that meeting ever happens, the desired outcome is determined.
Yep.
They already know where they want you to go. And they have an invite list. You're not always going to be told that, but there's always invited participants.
Yep.
And you walk into that room, and pretty soon you start seeing the STPs, that's what I call them, the same 10 people.
Yep.
Now the number is actually not 10, it may be 20 or 30, those are T's also. But you will see the same people over and over and over. Why? They will tell you that they're experts. In fact, in the newspaper articles, they will refer to them as the experts. They have no expertise to be there. They're politically reliable.
Yep.
Okay? They're recognized. They've had a reputation built for them with the help of the media. I want to add that in that whole Earth Summit in 1992, the role of the media was defined. It was their job to start building the storylines and enforcing them to change culture, change minds.
I believe that.
Because people believe what's in newsprint. Okay? So, you walk into the room and there's a facilitator. And now that people have gotten onto this, I went to a meeting and I kept asking the facilitator, what group are you with? I'm Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Frank. Frank, do you have a business card? Won't give you a business card. Which group are you with? What consulting firm are you with? I'm just here helping. And they won't tell you who they are or who they're with.
Sure want to know who you are though, don't they?
Oh, they do. That's because we've gotten onto them. If you've ever looked at city plans from around the state, they're identical.
Yep.
They're cookie cutter. And we're spending anywhere from $350,000 and up for new plans that are updated every 2 to 5 years that are 30-year plans, and we're paying to get the same stuff. I can write those. It's just pick 5 from column A, 3 from column B.
Just Xerox the last one.
Exactly. Okay, well-trained professionals do this every time. They start developing tension. Oh, we've got a little difference over here in this opinion from here. What do you think about that? And inevitably, they start pitting people against each other in the room to make the preordained viewpoint appear sensible. And any alternative,
Like you're crazy.
that's not rational. That's not doable. Oh, we can't, that's ridiculous. Okay. The other thing that you will always see is, at some point the facilitator will say, let me play devil's advocate.
Yep.
And he will play the opposite side and walk it out and give you the talking points that you need to use when you go out and start selling other people on this plan that they've already convinced you need to do. Happens every time. They number people off. I love this part. We're going to number you off in groups of 7 or 8 so you can sit down and discuss stuff.
Yep.
You watch and see who the speakers are in those groups. That is not an accident. It is deliberate. And they changed let's mix it up. Let's change your groups. Let's not stay in the same groups. You still got the invited people who were there for the meeting and told, here's where you're going to steer this meeting.
Yep.
So it looks like they're mixing it up. Now let's write it down. The big wall Post-its.
Yeah.
Somebody will inevitably say, how do we know that what you're putting up there is going to be in the report or whatever it is they're preparing? We're going to take a picture of it. Well, you didn't get a picture of it. So I have started writing down the bullets. And the facilitators will come and they'll say, hi, who are you?
I'm Kathy.
I never thought of that. I
Kathy.
should have done that.
I'm just a citizen. Well, come and join us. No, that's okay. I just want to watch. I want to watch the process. So I've decided I'm going to start checking,
Yeah.
see how
Good
how
point.
well they follow up. So the leaders are always in on it, and you can start picking them out. And I suggest that in your city, in your county, start doing that. Start going, don't participate. Don't speak. And here's the other thing I love. At the end, well, we want to hear from the public. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saved 5 minutes for public participation. You will be lucky if you had 2 or 3 people there from the public, because it's usually, you can't, either they don't tell you where it is, they don't give you much notice, or they put it in a place it's hard to find. That's not by accident.
I love the types where they have 50 people in the room and 26 are developers in real estate, and the other 8 are your county officials or your city officials.
Absolutely.
And then
And
you
you
got
will-
3 regular people that are just, not involved in that at
At a
all.
recent meeting in Douglas for our recreation center, it was a Wyoming Business Alliance meeting, that 23 and 23.
Yeah, Tour 23.
Tour 23. One of the leaders of the discussions was a newspaper reporter from the Wyoming Business Reporter, and she was from Sheridan. What's she doing being the leader? How was she an expert in Douglas? She's 20-something, 30-something. I thought that was strange.
Gotta
Okay.
fill a seat.
The public is listened to, but that's all you can ever hope for. You will never, ever see your suggestions in the outcome.
Yep.
Well, because they've already decided what the outcome is.
Correct.
Yeah, it's already
Correct.
predetermined before you even get there.
All right, so where do we go from here? The short story, we'll go to the long story first. The Agenda 21 ship has sailed. It is so deeply embedded in our system
Yep.
that we can't get it out. What we have to do, the only way that we could ever stop it is a catastrophic economic collapse, because it all hinges on money. That's the only way to stop it. We have to create and promote a counterculture that lives up to our ideals. And what are those ideals? Here's our
Watch,
key
teach,
right here.
Learn.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Truly love. Watch, teach, learn, share. That's how we beat it. We change our culture. It's too deeply ingrained. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Excuse me.
That was perfect.
That was perfect.
Yes.
I've been hearing that there's going to be a large economic collapse here this fall.
No way to
really
predict.
smart economic people from all over the world are saying we can't keep going like we are.
It's not sustainable.
It is not sustainable. Right. Whether or not it's this fall, I don't know, but there are several people who watch particular events, and there's like 5 key events for a collapse, and we've seen 4. And we've seen an inkling of the 5th. So, who knows? But even after the collapse, we need children, and we ourselves need to know the principles that really work. Because what they're promoting is fantasy. The stuff that I saw being promoted as science is it's absurd. There is no science.
It's junk science.
Junk science, yes. It's crazy.
We talk about the all wine and game tree stuff, all this stuff, you want to see the land, what have you. You can go into the biodiversity tree stuff, you got the wildland project.
Yeah.
And that, what you're talking about ties all into that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Right now, the 2 key things in our state where they're using, you don't see the same tactics used in every state, and what they're using here is water and wildlife. Watch water and wildlife. We are a headwater state, and that's where one of the ways they're going to get us, are getting us. Any other questions? Yes, Linda.
You mentioned WHAM. Would you explain WHAM? County commissioners talk about it all the time.
WHAM is the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. It is a subgroup of the National League of Cities. The whole purpose of WHAM and National League of Cities is to develop consensus among city officials. That's the only purpose.
Why does it have so much credibility among our leaders?
Media. They're supposed to. That's our leaders. Those are our experts. Our government has changed from elected representation to administration. Our bureaucrats have no limits on them because our legislators have handed it all over to them. Our bureaucrats are unaccountable, and their immunity from any kind of actions against them are built into law. You can't go after them. I found myself as a city councilman in a position of wanting to sue the city for an action by the city administrator, and our city attorney said, there were several of us who went in to meet with her, and she said, do you understand the position you're putting yourself in? The city administrator made a decision, made a recommendation, we passed it, we were now liable, she isn't. You're going to sue yourself.
These people also talk about democracy all the time. That's not democracy.
No.
Democracy requires accountability.
Exactly. So it's slick. The administrators are always protected, and the elected officials who are in the dark, they're simply acting on recommendations by the experts, are legally liable. So we dropped it. What do we do? The only way we thought about going to the state for help from the state attorney.
That's just my page.
You say a major push behind it is one world government, and they know that we're not going to give up our sovereignty as long as we have a strong middle class.
You know, there are so many components. There are so many odd bedfellows working together, each for their own purposes. Some want all the resources locked up for a handful of people, and they will talk very openly about, we got to get rid of 3/4 of our population, of our world population, and acting on it. They're doing it incrementally. That's progressivism. We know where we want to go. It looks a lot like socialism, communism, all these other isms, but we're just going to get there a little bit at a time. Right to die, abortion. So there's lots of different people working together for their own purpose. For some it's power, for some it's, I want you guys gone. I don't want to see my neighbor's lights. For another, they are true believers. They really think that they're so smart they could make things good for those people who believe like them. It's a whole conglomeration. But at the heart of it all is one thing, self-interest. I actually heard one of those groups say, okay, we just defeated a recreation center in Douglas. I went to a meeting 2 weeks later and they were talking about how they were going to tackle it the next time. And you know what they said? It's been defeated a couple of times. They said, what we're going to do is tell people what's in it for them. I went to another meeting. It was a state task force meeting, and it was the same thing. We need to tell people what's in it for them. They're pandering to self-interest. Our own selfishness and greed is driving it. Search your own heart.
Was truth on your list?
Yeah, that would be a good one.
75% reduction of the Earth's population is very conservative. Some of them are advocating 90% reduction.
Yeah. Yes,
10% survival of the human race.
I want to hit on what Andrew said. What they're doing is because they know that obviously people like us are going to be standing in the way and we're going to go. So they're starting with your kids. And that's what Hitler did, and it was a Marxist idea. And it was Marx and Stalin wanted to start with children as young as 4. They wanted them in the schools all the time and everything else. So anybody
lifelong
whose children
learners.
are in the public school system. It started when I was in school, but now it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
they're completely indoctrinated.
How many of you have heard the be a lifelong learner? My granddaughter would recite this every day at school. And I'll be a lifelong learner. That's straight out of the UN documents. And what is it? You're going to learn. You're going to change. You've got to change your culture, your language. Remember?
You have to be progressive.
Yeah,
The old ways are not good.
that's right.
One
So
other
we
thing
got to
about
retain our
education,
culture.
The next generation science standards have an entire section of the high school standards that are human sustainability.
I had people in my ecology classes who they were very open about hating humans. That was the most bizarre experience.
Oh, I don't need it.
I
Okay.
offered those people that start out by taking out themselves, that
Yeah.
serve as a good